I should have known something was wrong the moment my phone buzzed, and the screen showed, "Congratulations! You've matched with Ethan Cole." Ethan Cole, my boss. My very married to his job, emotionally detached, Armani suit-wearing boss. The man who thought smiles were optional and meetings were sacred. And there he was, apparently swiping right on men, including me. At first, I laughed because what else do you do when the universe serves you something so absurd? I mean, I joined the dating app as a joke, courtesy of my best friend Marcus, who said, "Dude, even introverts deserve Valentine's drama." Never did I expect my boss's face to pop up like a divine prank. But what came after wasn't a joke. Not even close. The office was unusually quiet the next morning. Maybe because Valentine's Day had turned our corporate battlefield into a graveyard of wilted flowers and unspoken expectations. I tried pretending nothing had happened. I told myself I'd unmatch him, delete the app, pretend it was all a glitch in the matrix. Except Ethan messaged first. "Interesting match. Care to explain, Noah?" I froze, then reread it. Twice. 3 times. My stomach flipped like bad sushi. Was this a trap? A test? Some HR violation roulette? I typed back, "Pretty sure the algorithm has a sense of humor." He didn't reply. Not for hours. And in those hours, I lived an entire lifetime of panic attacks. Then, at 8:47 p.m. ding. "Meet me for coffee tomorrow. 8 a.m. You pick the place." No emojis. No tone. Just Ethan. And that's how it started, a series of choices that would wreck and rebuild my entire idea of love. The next morning, I picked a cafe 2 blocks from the office, small, quiet, and neutral territory. The kind of place where secrets could sit comfortably between the scent of espresso and denial. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early, because of course he did. He wore a navy coat over his suit, hands in pockets, hair slightly damp from the snow. The moment he saw me, he gave a small, unreadable smile. "Noah," he said, in that calm, professional tone I knew too well. "Mr. Cole," I replied automatically, then immediately regretted it. He chuckled, a sound I'd never heard from him before. "We're off the clock. Call me Ethan." The air between us felt heavy with everything unsaid. I didn't know where to look. His eyes, his lips, the coffee cup he held too tightly. So, I began. "This is awkward." He tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle he wanted to solve. "Only if you make it awkward." I blinked. "You're the one who texted me after we matched." I was curious. He stirred his coffee slowly, eyes still on me. "I've never had someone from work show up on a dating app before. Right?" I said, forcing a laugh. "Small world. Or algorithm." "Algorithm," he repeated softly, almost to himself. Then, after a pause, "You didn't unmatch me." My heart skipped. "Neither did you." That was the first time his expression faltered. Just a flicker, enough for me to see something vulnerable slip through the cracks. "I don't do this," he admitted. "Dating. Any of it." I leaned back, watching him. "Then why now?" He hesitated, then looked straight at me. "Because it's Valentine's Day, and because lately, I've been tired of pretending I'm fine." Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the honesty. Maybe it was the loneliness hiding in his words, the same kind I carried quietly for years. I didn't know it then, but that coffee would be the beginning of everything. Ethan wasn't the man people thought he was. Beneath the sharp suits and perfect posture, he was a chaos barely held together by ambition. His walls were high, his rules higher, but there were cracks. And through those cracks, I saw pieces of a man who laughed softly when no one was watching, who played piano at 2 a.m. in an empty office, who once said, "Love is for people who have time to lose." I didn't mean to fall for him. I really didn't. But love, I learned, doesn't ask for permission, it just happens. Sometimes in the middle of spreadsheets and coffee stains. Sometimes when your boss looks at you like you're the first person who's ever truly seen him. One Friday night, we stayed late for a project deadline. Everyone else had left. The city outside the windows glowed like liquid gold. Ethan loosened his tie, exhaled, and leaned back in his chair. You ever feel like your life's on autopilot? All the time, I said, half joking. Except when you're giving me 6 tasks at once. He smirked. You complain, but you're the only one I trust to handle them. That hit harder than I expected. Why me? I asked quietly. His gaze softened. Because you don't flinch when I push. And because you remind me what it's like to care. Silence. Heavy. Intimate. Dangerous. Then, before I could stop myself, I said, you know, most people think you're heartless. He looked at me, eyes burning with something I couldn't name. And what do you think, Noah? I swallowed. I think you're just scared. He smiled sadly. You'd be right. And that was it, the moment we both stopped pretending. Our first kiss wasn't fireworks. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, almost hesitant, like two people afraid the world might end if they admitted how much they wanted it. It happened a week later, after a long meeting and too much whiskey. The office was dark, lit only by the city lights spilling through the glass. He said my name once, softly, as if tasting it. Then, before I could breathe, his lips were on mine. Every rule shattered, every defense gone. When we pulled apart, he whispered, "Tell me to stop." But I couldn't, because for the first time in years I felt alive. Of course, nothing about it was easy. Love between two men, between a boss and his employee, was the kind of scandal that could ruin lives. And in the corporate world, reputations were currency. We tried to keep it secret. Late night calls, hidden glances, accidental touches that burned too long. But rumors have a way of finding oxygen. One morning, HR called me in. "Noah," they said gently, "someone reported inappropriate behavior between you and Mr. Cole." I froze. The walls closed in. My hands shook. I lied, of course. Said it was nonsense, said we were just colleagues. They believed me, or pretended to. When I told Ethan, he went silent. Then he said, "Maybe we should stop." The words hit like a punch. "Stop," I repeated. Just like that. He looked away. "I can't risk the company. My position. You." I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "You're not protecting me. You're protecting yourself." His jaw clenched. "Maybe both." And just like that, he walked away. The weeks after that were brutal. The office felt colder. He avoided me. I avoided him. Every meeting was a silent battlefield of glances and regrets. I thought maybe he'd moved on. Maybe he'd buried us the way people bury inconvenient feelings, deep enough to pretend they never existed. Until one night I got a text. "I can't do this anymore. Meet me." And when I did, when I saw him standing on that same park bench where we first matched, he looked nothing like the man I used to know. He looked human. "Noah," he said softly, "you were right. I was scared. Of being seen. Of being happy. But I can't go back to pretending. Not after you." I wanted to be angry, to tell him it was too late. But the truth is, love doesn't keep score. So I stepped closer. And this time, when our hands touched, he didn't pull away. We stood there in the park for what felt like an eternity, just two men surrounded by the indifferent heartbeat of New York. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the glow of streetlights. He looked exhausted, like someone who had been fighting himself for too long. "Do you think this can work?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. His eyes searched mine, and I could see the fear tangled with hope. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I want to try. For once, I want to stop running." There it was, the truth we'd both been too afraid to speak. He reached for my hand, fingers brushing hesitantly against my skin, as if asking permission. I let him, and when his palm finally pressed against mine, it felt like gravity, inevitable and undeniable. For a while, things were good. Better than good. We learned how to exist quietly in the in-between. He'd send me late-night texts that read like secrets. "You left your pen in my office." Or maybe I'm just finding reasons to text you. We stole glances in meetings, brushed hands passing reports, shared elevator rides that felt like entire lifetimes. But the higher we climbed into that fragile happiness, the thinner the air became. The storm hit 2 weeks later. Someone we never figured out who had taken a photo of us leaving a restaurant in Soho. Just two men walking close, laughing. But in the ruthless ecosystem of corporate gossip, that was enough. The next morning, whispers spread through the office like wildfire. The photo made its way into private group chats. Some laughed, others sneered. A few avoided eye contact altogether. By noon, Ethan was called into the boardroom. He didn't come out for 3 hours. When he finally did, his face was a blank mask, the kind he wore when everything inside him was breaking. He walked past me without a word. But as he passed, his hand brushed mine, a fleeting, desperate touch that said more than any apology could. That night, he didn't answer my calls, or my messages, or anything. And by morning, I found out why. Ethan Cole has taken a temporary leave of absence. The email was short, clinical, and cold. No reason given. No return date listed. Just like that, he was gone. The weeks that followed were gray. Work lost its meaning. I moved through days like a ghost, doing what was required, saying what was expected. But every time I passed his office, now dark and locked, something inside me ached. Marcus noticed, of course. "Dude, you look like someone canceled Christmas." I gave a hollow laugh. "Feels about right." He studied me for a long moment before saying, "Whoever he was, he mattered, huh? More than I wanted him to." Marcus sighed. "Then maybe don't let him be the one who decides how this ends." Those words stayed with me, echoing like a dare. So one night, I did something reckless. I went to Ethan's apartment. It was on the Upper West Side, sleek, modern, every detail perfectly curated. Except the man who opened the door wasn't the version of Ethan I knew. He looked wrecked. His shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, jaw unshaven. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat on the table behind him. "Noah," he breathed, like saying my name hurt. "You shouldn't be here." "Too late," I said, stepping inside before he could stop me. "You don't get to disappear without explaining." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling shakily. "They gave me a choice. Step down quietly or face an investigation. They had the photo, the rumors, the texts." My throat tightened. "So you left." "I had to," he said, his voice breaking. "If they fired me, it'd destroy everything I've built." "Everything you've built?" I snapped. "What about what we built?" That silence again, sharp, heavy, cruel. Finally, he whispered, "You don't understand what it's like to live under a microscope. Every move I make gets judged. And being with you." He stopped, swallowing hard. It terrified me how much I wanted it. I took a step closer. "Then stop being terrified." He shook his head. "It's not that simple." "Maybe it is," I said softly. "Maybe you just don't believe you deserve to be happy." His eyes met mine, raw, desperate, searching. "And you do." "No," I admitted. "But I'm willing to fight for it." He stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "You shouldn't have to fight me too." And just like that, he turned away. I left before I cried. That night, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by takeout boxes and regret. I hated him. I missed him. I wanted to forget him. But love, I realized, isn't something you can switch off. It lingers in the spaces between heartbeats, in the songs you avoid, in the coffee shops that still smell like his cologne. Weeks turned into months. I threw myself into work. HR promoted me to lead a new project, maybe out of pity, maybe because I was the only one still standing. And then one morning, as I was reviewing reports, a familiar voice said quietly, "Still drinking your coffee too sweet?" I froze. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking healthier but older somehow, like he'd been through hell and made peace with it. "Hi," I said, "because what else do you say to the man who once broke you open?" He smiled faintly. "Hi." There was an awkward pause before he spoke again. "I came back to resign officially, but I wanted to see you first." "Mission accomplished," I said flatly, though my heart pounded like thunder. He laughed softly. "Still sarcastic? Still running away?" I shot back. He flinched, not because the words were cruel, but because they were true. "No," he said quietly. "Not this time." He told me he'd spent the last few months reevaluating everything: his career, his identity, his fear. He'd gone to therapy, reconnected with family, learned how to breathe again. And then he looked at me with the kind of vulnerability that felt sacred. "I don't know what the future looks like, Noah, but I know it doesn't make sense without you in it." I wanted to stay angry, to protect myself. But something in his tone, the quiet sincerity, melted the walls I'd built. So I asked, "What makes you think I'd take you back?" He smiled sadly. "Because you still love me." God, he was right. I sighed. "You're insufferable." He stepped closer. "You love that about me." And when he kissed me this time, it wasn't hesitant. It was a promise, messy, imperfect, real. We didn't go back to what we were. We built something new. He left the company and started his own consulting firm. I took a position at a nonprofit, smaller, humbler, but freer. We learned how to exist without hiding. But freedom, we discovered, comes with its own price. People talked. Old colleagues made jokes. One article online speculated about inappropriate office romance. It hurt, but we faced it together. One night, as we walked home after dinner, a man passing by muttered something cruel under his breath, a slur that burned like acid. Ethan stopped. For a moment, I thought he'd explode. But instead, he just took my hand right there, in the middle of the sidewalk, and said quietly, "Let them see." I squeezed back. "You sure?" He nodded. "I've spent my whole life pretending. I'm done hiding from something beautiful." And that's when I realized this wasn't just about love. It was about courage. About learning that happiness isn't granted. It's claimed. Months later, on Valentine's Day, exactly 1 year after that accidental swipe, Ethan surprised me with a trip. We drove upstate, to a small cabin overlooking a frozen lake. The kind of place where silence felt holy. As the sun set, he handed me a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring. "No labels," he said. "No promises I can't keep. Just this, a reminder that you changed my life." Tears blurred my vision. "You're impossible." He smiled. "You love impossible things." I slipped the ring on. It fit perfectly. And when I kissed him, surrounded by snow and quiet and everything that almost broke us, I realized that sometimes love isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. About choosing each other again and again, even when the world tells you not to. But life, being what it is, didn't let us stay in that perfect moment forever. Ethan's firm grew fast, too fast. He was offered a partnership in Los Angeles, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I could see the conflict tearing him apart. "I don't want to leave you," he said one night, pacing our apartment. "Then don't," I replied simply. He stopped. "You know it's not that easy." "It never is," I said. "But I won't ask you to choose between love and ambition. I just need to know which one you'll regret losing more." He stared at me, silent. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the answer. He took the job. But not without me. A month later, we packed our lives into boxes and drove across the country, 2 men, a beat-up car, and a future still unwritten. Somewhere between New York and California, on a long stretch of highway, he reached over and laced his fingers with mine. "You know," he said, grinning, "for someone who claims he doesn't believe in fate, you sure swiped right at the perfect time." I laughed. "You mean you swiped right?" He smirked. "Semantics." And with the road unfolding endlessly ahead of us, I realized that real love isn't a straight line. It's messy, inconvenient, terrifying. But it's also worth every risk. Because sometimes you swipe right on a stranger and end up finding home. California wasn't what I expected. It was louder, brighter, warmer, like life itself had turned the volume back up. Ethan and I rented a small apartment overlooking Santa Monica, where mornings smelled like ocean salt and burnt coffee, and evenings were stitched with sunsets too beautiful to describe. For a while, it felt like a dream. We built new routines. He'd work late from the balcony, glasses perched on his nose, while I cooked dinner with music humming in the background. Sometimes he'd join me in the kitchen, dancing terribly to old pop songs. It became our secret ritual, laughter tangled with the smell of garlic and wine. But even dreams, I learned, need maintenance. Ethan's firm grew demanding. Late nights became longer. Calls became constant. There were days when we barely spoke except for the goodnight kisses that felt more habitual than intimate. One evening, I found him asleep at his desk, laptop still glowing, unread emails like tiny wars waiting to happen. I stood there for a while, just watching him, the man who'd once risked everything for love, now slipping quietly back into the same loneliness that had consumed him before me. I touched his shoulder gently. "Hey," I whispered. He stirred, blinking. "What time is it?" "Almost midnight." He rubbed his eyes, sighing. "I just need to finish this proposal." "No," I said softly. "You need to rest. You're losing yourself again." His gaze met mine, tired, guilty, human. "I'm trying to build something real, Noah." "So am I," I said, voice shaking. "But what's the point of success if we're not in it together?" He looked away, jaw tight. "You think I don't know that? Then prove it," I whispered. Silence stretched between us, raw and sharp. And for the first time in months, I saw fear flicker in his eyes again. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of waves outside. On the counter was a note written in Ethan's precise handwriting. "Went for a drive. Don't wait up." I hated that note. Hated how neat it was, how calm, how him. So I didn't wait. I went after him. I found him hours later on the beach, shoes off, sleeves rolled up, staring at the horizon like it might offer forgiveness. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. Maybe he knew I'd come. "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak. "I've been chasing ghosts again, trying to prove something to people who stopped mattering a long time ago." I walked up beside him. "And what about me?" He turned to me, eyes glistening. "You're the only thing that ever made it matter." Something in his voice cracked open all the anger I'd been holding. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stepped closer until we were inches apart. "Then stop running," I said quietly. "Stop trying to earn the world's approval. You already have mine." For a moment, neither of us moved. The waves crashed softly against the shore, the sun bleeding gold across the water. Then Ethan reached for me, pulling me close, not out of desperation, but out of surrender. "I love you," he murmured against my hair. "Not the idea of you, not the safety of you. You, just you." And for the first time, it didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like peace. That night, we talked for hours about fear, about ambition, about the future, about how love isn't a finish line, but a daily decision. We decided to start over, not as boss and employee, not as men running from judgment, but as partners. Equal. Honest. It wasn't easy. Some nights, the old wounds ached. Sometimes we fought not out of hatred, but because we both cared too much. But we learned to listen, to forgive, to keep choosing each other. A year later, on another Valentine's Day, Ethan suggested we visit New York again. "I want to see where it all began," he said. So we went back to that same little cafe where we'd shared our first awkward conversation. The owner still recognized me. "You two finally made it work, huh?" she said with a wink. Ethan laughed, squeezing my hand under the table. "Eventually." We spent the day walking the city, retracing old steps, rewriting old memories. And when evening fell, we found ourselves back in the same park where everything had changed. The skyline shimmered just like before. The air was cold, but familiar. Ethan turned to me, eyes soft. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "I told you to stop being terrified." He nodded. "And you were right. You always were." Then he pulled a small box from his coat pocket. My heart stopped. "Ethan," he smiled. "Relax. It's not what you think." Inside wasn't a ring, it was a key. "To what?" I asked, confused. He grinned. "To the place we're going to build next. Somewhere that's ours. No offices. No secrets. Just us." I stared at him, speechless. He shrugged lightly. "I figured it's about time we stop surviving and start living." Tears welled in my eyes, not because of the gesture, but because of what it meant. Growth, healing, freedom. Later that night, we stood at the edge of the park, watching the city glitter beneath us. Ethan wrapped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "You ever think about how one stupid swipe changed everything?" he murmured. I laughed through my tears. "You mean your swipe?" "Semantics," he said again, smiling. We stayed like that for a long time, two men who'd once been afraid to be seen, now standing in the open, unafraid. And maybe that's the real miracle, not that we found love, but that we chose it, despite everything that tried to keep us apart. Years later, when people asked how we met, we'd tell the story like it was a comedy: the dating app glitch, the awkward coffee, the chaos that followed. They'd laugh, shake their heads, and say, "That sounds insane." And I'd smile and reply, "Yeah, but so does love." On our 5th Valentine's anniversary, Ethan woke me early. The California sky was painted pink and gold. "Come on," he said, pulling me outside. We stood on the balcony as the first light spilled over the ocean. He handed me a mug of coffee, too sweet, just the way I liked it. I looked at him, at the lines on his face, the silver just beginning to thread his hair, and realized something simple but profound. Love isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, quiet moments that build a life. The laughter, the forgiveness, the choice every single day to stay. He caught me staring and raised an eyebrow. "What?" I smiled. "Nothing. Just, I'm glad you swiped right." He chuckled, leaning in to kiss me. Best mistake I ever made. And as the sun rose behind him, warm, endless, full of promise, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. Because love, in all its messy, terrifying beauty, had finally found its home. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.